Maybe the Earth was superior because it was in motion. In motion around what? Its sustenance. Fox and hound? I don't know. Hound has an A in it. How? E. They. G. C. A. IA. Harp. E. Someday they're going to make an E with like 4 lines on it. Capital. I am simply making videos on topics that interest me, that I feel that not enough other people are discussing. It wouldn't fit the staff. It would include the base or something. At least imply it. Oh! Okay, language over. Here, let's move back. I'm so excited. I'm seeing normally now.
But what I don't get is why me, a veteran with an MBA, why am I the one connecting the dots for these leaders in the scientific community? Like,
prosecuted
what are they doing? Like, what's the problem here? Are they too busy, I don't know, creating definitions and writing them in textbooks or something and memorizing them? Like, what's going on?
However,
so yeah, going back to what I said at the beginning of this video as far as making some noise on this channel, well, it's time to call out the incredible inaccuracies involving what we were told about lost ancient human civilization. As all the dots connect, that ultimately ties together what I've been stating since the beginning of this channel. And this 19-mile wide crater that generated a blast equivalent to some 700 megatons is indeed the smoking gun evidence that yes, a cataclysmic cosmic impact occurred approximately 12,000 plus years ago and was a reset for what was then a relatively advanced ancient human civilization. Case in point, and here's a fact that most people do understand, which is that we still have no idea how the Great Pyramid of Giza was constructed. I mean, it is a mystery. We only have theories on how they cut, carved, and moved these stone blocks, yet every method proposed ultimately failed when tested. And I'll be coming back to that in just a second, but most people have no idea that not one single mummy was ever found in any of the pyramids, ever. Most people are legitimately surprised when they hear that for the first time, but check it for yourself. Since, after all, we were taught in school that, yeah, the pyramids were built to be tombs for the pharaohs, so it's a bit weird that they excluded that part about no mummies ever being found in any of them ever, and that there is actually not one single shred of evidence to even suggest, nor is there evidence to support that the so-called ancient Egyptians that we were taught about in school 4,000 years ago were the ones who actually built it. And you might be thinking right now, well, of course there's evidence. How could there not be?
Idol.
Well, if you consider some definition in a textbook that wasn't tested by the scientific method as evidence, well, you know, it says it right here. Here's the evidence. Sorry, guys, that's not evidence. And these methods, these theories that they developed 160 plus years ago, apparently they were based on no evidence and they didn't even try to test them at all. In fact, there is literally zero ties that connect the so-called ancient Egyptians to the pyramids. Like I've said in other videos, out of the tens of thousands of hieroglyphs and petroglyphs found throughout ancient Egypt, not one single one of them shows anything about the pyramids.
Have the plans.
Zero. Most people are surprised when they hear that as well. But not only that, there is not one single hieroglyph or petroglyph inside the pyramids. Zero. Yet if you go to any known Egyptian tomb, they are covered wall to wall in art. Guys, the pyramids were not tombs. They were clearly something else, and I do discuss this in other videos, but the point I'm making in this video is that there is absolutely zero scientific evidence to support that the so-called ancient Egyptians that we were taught about in school could have constructed these structures. Now, I already know that some people will say, and this is because I've seen comments in prior videos, but a couple years ago, one of the greatest clickbait articles ever came out, and they called it the greatest discovery of the 21st century, that involved the world's oldest papyrus scrolls that said they tell us how the pyramids were constructed. Unfortunately, most people must not have read anything other than the headlines, and the actual evidence shows that not one single word involving a pyramid is even stated in these scrolls. All these scrolls state is that some limestone blocks were moved on a boat up the Nile River to Giza, which is something that we already knew had happened. And most structures found around Giza that are not the pyramids are without a doubt younger than the pyramids themselves and are all made of limestone. These scrolls literally prove nothing, and it was just a clickbait thing to generate more interest in the topic of Egyptology and tourism. Ultimately, what it comes down to is that the civilization that existed thousands of years before the so-called ancient Egyptians that we're familiar with, they're the ones that constructed the pyramids, and they were wiped out from the events following the Greenland impact. And over the course of some 12 to 13,000 years, all evidence of how they did it was consumed by the earth and decayed to nothing, gone from existence forever. Here's an example to really paint you a picture of just how long of a period of time 12 to 13,000 years is. Scientists say that if all humans were to vanish off the face of the earth today, the very last man-made structure to exist would be the Hoover Dam, which they estimate will weather down into oblivion in some 10,000 years. Yet, the Greenland impact, again, is closer to 13,000 years old, so add another 3,000 years on top of that 10,000 years.
When has it
the only
ever
thing
been
that would survive is stone, and the pyramids are a fantastic example of this. Because after all, the Egyptians were known for being a Bronze Age culture, meaning that their most advanced technology was primitive, made of a combination of copper and tin, and the theory is that this is what they used to cut and carve these stone blocks. But if you think that bronze saws were used to cut these stones, then you have chosen to believe something without any supportive scientific evidence to back it up, which is no fault of your own, because this is what we were taught from an early age. But
that's what everything is.
Here's a picture of one of the best preserved bronze saws from the time of the ancient Egyptians. The blade is less than 2 feet in length, and again made of bronze. And they want you to believe that saws like this could have cut and carved 2.5 million stone blocks, as is the case with the Great Pyramid. Which, let's not forget, these blocks are several feet in length on average and have 6 sides. I'm not saying that to be patronizing, but each one of those 6 sides was cut with laser cut precision. And on top of that, there are more than 100 pyramids found throughout Egypt. So we're talking about tens of millions of stone blocks. In fact, the only depictions of the Egyptians using bronze saws at all were on wood. And they were all very small, not nearly big enough to cut the massive size blocks in the Great Pyramid. And here are a few other examples of saws that they have found, all less than 2-foot blades. But no rational person would suggest that a 2-foot bronze saw would or could cut the massive 12-foot by 8-foot granite blocks of the Osirion in Egypt, or with that level of precision. It's just not possible. No joke, apparently various scientists, archaeologists, and leaders of modern academia literally decided to skip over a few parts of the scientific method when stating how these stones were cut, carved, and moved into place.
Spread evenly.
And what's disturbing is that in the last several years,
in the rainforest,
mainstream Egyptologists have actually finally tested these proposed methods and ultimately were completely debunked. They didn't even finish one single block,
Who even knows he implied
Yet you never heard anything about it. Ultimately, they didn't hand out the memo, and they're still teaching and saying the same exact thing. Tell me that we don't have a problem here. Because that's exactly what they've done. They've been sharing outdated, proven false information for decades. Instead of saying, hey, let's open this discussion to new ideas. Obviously, these methods don't make sense, so what are the other possibilities? They refuse to even entertain the conversation.
Especially if it was on a hill.
Why is that? Like I said before, guys, it involves people's livelihoods and money, as well as that groupthink mentality. People don't like change, especially when they thought they knew something their entire lives.